Last night, I got an email from a trusted teacher that I've taken classes from before, and it was a $50 offer to buy a particular PDF book that I thought would be very useful. And it was something that I had been working on myself, had to do with my website and how to do some of the pages there. And I found myself debating, should I buy this? Should I not buy this? I was really kind of caught, and I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I kept going back and forth. And it felt like the question that came up for me is, why is this such a big deal? $50. And on the one hand, $50 is not a small thing. $50, if you do a lot of $50, it can add up. And I know I have a tendency to spend. And so I can end up spending on good things, but getting into trouble if I don't watch myself, if I don't budget myself. But I just noticed this little indecision going on, and it was like bigger than just the actual decision, practical decision. So I started thinking, what's going on here? Why is this moving in the direction of overwhelm? It wasn't really an overwhelm, but it was moving in that direction. So when I thought about it, what I realized is that there was something else going on, and it was not about the money itself. Yeah, that's a factor. But the real issue was more of an emotional issue, like an emotional effect. I was afraid of emotional discomfort. I was afraid of regret, or I was afraid of feeling like a failure or that I had made a mistake. And so when I noticed that, I realized that there were two components here. One component was the actual decision making. Is this practical? Is this something I will use? Is it something that I want to invest in? Just comes down to practicalities. That was one side, but that was probably 20% of it. The other 80% was me sitting in this emotion of oh my gosh, I don't want to fail. And the image that came to mind is I had bought another more expensive course from this same teacher, and I had never actually watched it, never actually did anything with it. And recently, this was years ago, recently I went to go find it on my computer because I actually did want to listen to it. I couldn't even find it because, I've changed computers a few times and it was gone. So I felt kind of like a fool, and I didn't want to have that feeling again. So same teacher, similar idea, and it brought this up. So it's just interesting to notice how the emotional side comes into play. And it's so quiet. It's so, you don't even know it's happening, but you feel it. And it was happening here for me. So the insight for me is that this wasn't about the purchase. It was about the fear of being wrong. And I started thinking about that more deeply. And I realized that we as highly sensitive people process information deeply, and we do this even more so when the stakes feel personal or when it feels like it's going to mean something about me, like I made a mistake. And so interestingly, from just a point of view of psychology, the way the mind works is that spending decisions can trigger the same systems we use to predict emotional safety. And so we're not necessarily being indecisive. We're scanning for hidden consequences. We're like, uh-oh, this is an important decision. Am I going to regret this? Is this going to be a problem? And perfectionism can often show up here. If I make the perfect choice, I'll be safe. I'll be free from regret, shame, judgment. It's funny. It's not the tiger that's out to get us. It's the emotion that is out to get us. We're afraid of experiencing some negative emotion like regret or shame or judgment. And so the system goes into a little bit of alert and can make me, in this case, just be a little more vigilant and a little more careful, a little bit unnerved, or even, like I said, slightly moving towards overwhelm. So the nervous system interprets this uncertainty as a kind of threat, even with just $50. But what I'm seeing as I look at it more objectively, now today, is that the overthinking is not a failure. It's just a strategy that the mind uses to try to keep itself safe. Now, that may not be fully based in reality, and it leads into the next thing of what can you do about this, which is to look more closely at what you're thinking and believing. So for me, the thought was something like spending money means I'm irresponsible. And especially if I make a poor choice. If I waste money, then it means I'm irresponsible. And so therefore, I need to make the perfect choice. So when I looked at that, and the way I like to look at it is using the work of Byron Katie, which is a way to question any thought that is connected to an emotion, what I saw is that it's not necessarily irresponsible to spend money and not fully utilize the money you spent. Like, you don't have to do it perfectly. That it's okay to make mistakes, quote unquote. And the place that I found in this is that life is lived kind of spontaneously. And yes, there are things where I need to be extra vigilant, but there are also times where I'm allowed a little bit of room for error. And even when I make errors in a large scale, it's something that I can adjust with. I remember last summer, I was looking at a new URL for my business, and I spent, oh my gosh, almost $5,000 on it. And it turned out it was not the URL I wanted after all. And I'm stuck with this expensive loss. It took me a long time to pay off on my credit card. And, that's a big loss. But even that was not the end of the world. It didn't completely put me out of business. It didn't shut me down. It wasn't a huge, huge, huge mistake, although I do regret it. So this put it a little more in perspective for me of how spending money can be done, and mistakes can be made in that process, because whenever I do make a mistake, I learn something. And I'm more careful about spending money, a large amount of money, something like I did last summer. I'm much more quick to stop that. But with $50, yeah, I'm aware, but it doesn't have to go into a total spiral. So, the question that comes to me is, what would I choose if I had already was trusting myself? And if I trust myself, I can't actually make a mistake from a certain point of view. If I'm trusting myself, I'm taking the next step that feels correct to me, and it's the best I can do at this stage. And then, of course, I can change course, correct course as I go. But for me, this is a change of, instead of referring to a perfect outcome, I'm referring more and more to an internal place where I feel this is the next step I'd like to take, and who knows what the outcome will be. For me, this builds a kind of self-trust, and it allows me to live with good enough decisions and just observe how they work out, observe how I feel, and keep tuning in to my intuition rather than trying to rigidly control myself and try to avoid mistakes at all costs. So it's more like training me as an internal sensitive instrument than on trying to have the perfect outcome. Because whenever we're learning something, we always are going to make mistakes. When we took our first steps as kids, we fell down, and that was part of the learning process. So it's allowing myself to experiment that feels like the place that I like to actually be. So the path to clarity isn't in analyzing more, it's in trusting my ability to respond with kindness towards myself no matter what happens. If I can be as okay with making a mistake as I am with making the perfect choice, then there's some freedom there. Then I can experiment with a lot less pressure.